Oh my God, I've been living in Paris for months now, and I know everything there is to know about France because, Paris is basically France. Am I right? Bonjour! Welcome back to Unintentionally Frenchified. The amount of times that I have probably annoyed a French person without even realizing that I'm doing it could be astronomical. I'm not proud of it, but I admit it. So today's video is going to focus on some of those things to help you either avoid the same mistakes that I made or possibly give you ammunition if you want to piss off a Frenchie for whatever reason. I've done a previous video where I talk specifically about money, politics, and religion because these are pretty specific subjects in France. So you can check that out here. I won't be talking about these today, but focusing on some other, maybe less known subjects. So let's not waste any time. C'est parti. Cannot start this video without talking about Paris versus the rest of France, as in my intro. The French are people that are very proud of where they come from. Just because they don't wave a French flag in front of their house or pledge allegiance to the French flag every morning like we do in America does not mean that they're not proud of where they come from. And just because a huge part of the French population lives in Paris doesn't mean that all of France is like Paris or acts like Parisians or functions like Parisians. It's a very specific part of France. So you have to keep this in mind when you're talking to French people. I have been destroyed in my comments on YouTube, sometimes when I make cultural comments or culture shocks that tend to lean more towards Parisian things than French things in general. So just keep this in mind when you're interacting with French people, especially if Paris is where you live or if it's the only experience that you've had living in France. And double tip, when you meet someone from Corsica, they are from Corsica. Don't try to tell them they are French first before they're Corsican or get into any of those types of discussion because you might possibly be met with quite a bit of outrage. I love the French accent in English. When the S's and the TH's become more of Z's and so something becomes something, I have absolutely melted many times listening to a French man or a French woman speak English with that typical French accent. However, asking people to talk in English or asking them to repeat words in English because you're oohing and ahhing over their accent just really isn't cool unless maybe you're in an in-bed situation. That might be okay. From my experience, even when I'm speaking French with an accent, it makes people super self-conscious when you point out their accent. Something to keep in mind is that the French aren't actually known in Europe for speaking English very well compared to the different countries around them. And so they do kind of grow up being a bit self-conscious to speak English because either you have not a great accent and so you're self-conscious about your accent, or you speak English with a really good English accent and then you're kind of seen as like show-offy. And so speaking English isn't something that a lot of people are very comfortable doing. So if you're lucky enough that somebody's making an effort with you to speak in English, I would shy away from making any comments about how cute their accent is. Complaining obsessively about the strike culture in France. Now, I am the first one to admit after 10 years in France that I have absolutely been impacted by strikes. I remember one time I was flying from the south of France to Paris and my flight was delayed 2 hours because there were strikes on the airlines. Once we got on the flight, the flight was delayed another hour because the air controllers had then gone on strike, so nobody could actually validate us to take off. And then when we finally got to Paris, we spent 2.5 hours on the plane at landing because the woman who pushes the stairs to the door so that we can actually all disembark from the plane was on strike, and there was no way for us to get off the plane. Fuck. But the thing about France is that this country didn't become what it is today by just sitting on their butts when they weren't happy with something. Do you think that they got universal health care, 35-hour work weeks, 5 weeks of paid vacation, parental paid leave off, etc., 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 by sitting and doing nothing when they were unhappy about something? Now, the actual reason someone is striking is controversial in France, and there will be people who agree or disagree with that. But I would shy away from complaining that their strike culture is annoying, because it's probably going to start a debate with whatever French people are around you, and we know who wins and who loses in a debate with French people. This one shouldn't surprise anybody that has the slightest idea of what it means to be polite in France, so it's only going to get 5 seconds of my time, but you can't not say it in a video like this. You must always, always start every phrase with bonjour. In English, it is very polite to start off a sentence saying, excuse me. In French, it is not very polite to start off a sentence saying, excuse me. You must always say bonjour first. Bonjour, excusez-moi, very polite. Excusez-moi, not very polite. And from experience, when you really bother someone, they will look at you and go, bonjour, afterwards. And then you'll have to say, bonjour, excusez-moi, où sont les toilettes? You end up feeling very uncomfortable, so just say bonjour every time. Cheese is a big deal in France. If somebody lobbied to get a cheese wheel added to the French flag, it might actually pass. Jokes aside, because when it comes to cheese, it's not actually a joking matter in France. In France, first off, real cheese is bought from a fromagerie, not at the supermarket. Now, yes, you can absolutely find cheese at a supermarket, and if you want to buy like your shredded cheese and your Parmesan cheese there, I mean, hell, you can buy all your cheese there if you want, but I wouldn't really call it real cheese in front of the French. Industrial cheese tends to be a little bit of a topic versus cheese that you buy from your fromagerie. Second thing to know is that cheese gets eaten at the end of the meal, before the dessert, and after the salad. So there's not really a lot of cheese on crackers at snack time. There's a very specific time that you eat cheese. And there is a very specific way to cut cheese based on the shape of the cheese. I won't even get into detail about this because it is very specific, but I put a link below if you need to know how to cut cheese based on the shape. But if you happen to cut the cheese the wrong way, don't say I didn't warn you. Finally, to wrap it up, there are some very stereotypical things that we know aren't true but still tend to be used when we tease the French, like, I heard the French don't shower, do you shower? Or, I heard that the French eat snails and frog legs every day. Or, my favorite, voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? Listen. When people in France ask me if I grew up eating hamburgers and Coke every day, I laugh and say, ah ha 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 ha, and then I also want to punch them in their face. So just keep that in mind if you want to bring up some of the more stereotypical French things that you know are borderline ridiculous. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below if you have any subjects or tips or things to stay away from because they really make the French shiver. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and I'll see everybody next week. Bisous!